During President Donald Trump's primetime address Thursday, he pointed to a 2020 case in Michigan to demonstrate what he called evidence of alleged fraud by a large-scale voter registration operation.
Among the disclosures tonight are FBI files detailing evidence of alleged fraud by a large-scale voter registration operation in Michigan. In 2020, Michigan State Police raided a Democrat Get Out the Vote organization, corrupt group in Muskegon. The documents state that some canvassers admitted to FBI agents that they signed voter registration forms in other people's names, submitted fraudulent registration for people who did not exist, and received gift cards tied to their number of applications that they produced. In other words, it was pay, play, and cheat.
That is an old debunked conspiracy theory. Election officials have repeatedly said that case is not evidence of widespread voter fraud, even though there have been years of MAGA Republicans and election deniers trying to portray it that way. As a spokesperson for the Michigan State Police told Michigan Advance, quote, fraudulent voter registration forms had been created, but no fraudulent voter registrations were processed and no ballots were cast. Investigators concluded that the misconduct was carried out by a handful of low-level canvassers trying to inflate their productivity, not as part of any coordinated effort to impact Michigan elections. Not to mention, the FBI officially closed the investigation in September 2025 while Donald Trump was president. Joining us now is Michigan Attorney General Dana Nessel, whose office investigated that case and referred it to the FBI for prosecution. Attorney General, we just laid out why what the president said there's no evidence for. So I want to focus with you on what he's laying the groundwork to potentially do. Because, yes, the president's speech was talking about past elections, but he was also very heavily focused and called American elections writ large, quote, rigged and stolen. So what are you preparing for? What do you think could be one of the biggest risks here or the biggest threats that he may try to do around the November election?
Well, I think that, as usual, the administration is focused on Michigan. In this year, in a year where he's not on the ballot, I think what he's most focused on is the fact that we have 3 congressional districts for the U.S. House of Representatives that are likely to flip. The 4th, the 7th, and the 10th congressional districts are all looking very much like they may flip. And the last thing that President Trump wants is to have to deal with a Democratic majority in the United States House of Representatives, where, of course, a bare majority can issue articles of impeachment. So, of course, he's already trying to sow the seeds of doubt in our elections and to undermine people's faith in the safety and the security of our elections. I think it's important to note we have 1,600 local clerks that actually administer the elections in Michigan. It's a very decentralized system. Most of those clerks are Republicans. And again, as you mentioned about the case that he brought up in Muskegon, first of all, the Department of Justice in those documents didn't even spell the name of the city correctly, let alone get into the other facts right. But as you indicated, this is a perfect example of the system working. Despite any effort to submit fraudulent registration forms, no one was improperly registered to vote. No one who shouldn't have received a ballot. No one was able to vote who shouldn't have been able to. And no votes were counted that should not have been counted. So, again, zero fraud when it comes to the actual results of the election. But I really think what the administration is trying to do is really to distract you from all the things that are making them deeply unpopular. You know, they want to distract us from the price of gas or ground beef. They want to distract us from the forever war that was started in Iran. And they want to distract from all the graft and the massive amounts of corruption being perpetrated by the Trump administration. So we have very safe and secure and accurate elections in Michigan. It's just that the Trump administration wants people to believe otherwise.
Attorney General, but, a lot of this is going, I'm very glad to have you on, but whatever Donald Trump and his team are planning and thinking about when it comes to the election, a lot of it is going to happen and going to require folks like you across the country, attorneys general, to sue and go into the court of law. So what is the plan? Because we have been seeing Donald Trump and his team lay out a blueprint for what they're going to do. They're not being quiet about it in any way, shape, or form. What are you, and I assume other attorneys general, are constantly in contact with each other. What is the actual plan to protect the voters from the federal government?
Well, first of all, as we do every election cycle, we do tabletop exercises over and over and over again. And that involves, my department, the Department of State, the Secretary of State's office, the Michigan State Police, the governor's office, all levels of law enforcement. But also, we are prepared to sue. Myself and the other Democratic AGs have worked very hard so that we can try our best to contemplate every scenario, every circumstance. And we're ready to go into court. And I think in many cases, we're going to have to go into court ahead of time. One of the problems, ironically, that we've been seeing is we try sometimes to go into court to stop something that would be illegal, a violation of state law, federal law, or the Constitution. And we base it upon the very words of the president. And sometimes the courts will tell us, we don't actually know if the president means this or not, because he says a lot of ridiculous things. And I guess if we had to believe everything he said, we already would have occupied and invaded Greenland, So that part is a little difficult, but we're prepared to go into court as quickly as possible in order to defend the rights of our voters and our poll workers and our clerks and our secretaries of state who are under threat by this administration. And it's very clear they're just trying to scare people and intimidate them so that they don't show up to the polls and don't vote. And they're trying to scare the very people who administer our elections. And we're going to do everything we can to fight back in order to uphold our democracy here in Michigan and across the United States.